Well, a traditional military conflict may be losing proposition. Which way relations between India and China go largely depends on the ambitions of the man who's steering the Chinese ship. It is official now, Xi Jinping is staying in power not for 5 or 10 years, but for an indefinite period of time. The President Xi clinging to the throne of power is taking place not in a democracy where elections take place, but in the Communist People's Republic of China, where ironically the people themselves have absolutely no say whatsoever in the matter. The senior foreign affairs editor Padma Rao takes a look at some world leaders who have or continue to remain seated in the high chair at least for over a decade, whether put there by the people or otherwise.
Prime Minister Dean Barrow of the small South American country Belize has been in power for just over 10 years. Mr. Barrow became the country's first Prime Minister of African origin. When he came to power in 2008, he did so on the promise to end crime, corruption and to create a Senate. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is currently in all kinds of trouble and facing several serious charges of graft. If a snap poll were held in Israel today, Mr. Netanyahu would likely not win. But still, he has managed to stay in power as Israel's Prime Minister from 1996 to date, that is, for nearly 12 years. She is the original Powerfrau and yet a popular, humble personality. Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel has been the executive head of Germany's government since 2005. That's already more than 12 years. And now that her party has finalized a coalition, Ms. Merkel will remain in power for another 4 years. Closer to home, there's Bangladesh's Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Ms. Hasina is on her second term, having been elected a second time on 2009. All in all, Ms. Hasina has clocked more than 14 years as the head of government in Dhaka. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has been in the international headlines for various controversial reasons. But at home, he seems popular enough to have had a taste of 2 high offices twice over, those of Prime Minister and President. He's been PM from 1999 to 2000 and again from 2008 to 2012. And he's been the head of state, first for 8 years from 2000 onwards and then from 2012 to the present. But what's in a number? There are some leaders who have spent several decades in power. Take the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. He's been president of his country from 1994. Yes, right up to the present. That is well over 23 years. Initially, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was only the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran, but he later took on the title of Supreme Leader too. He first came to power in 1981 and 36 years and 140 days later, he's still here. But there are few career leaders of the likes of Cameroon's President Mr. Paul Biya. He's been in power first as Prime Minister and later as President since, here it comes, 1975. That's a marathon run of 42 years and 245 days. Padma Rao, WION.
All right, so that was a look at some of the leaders who continue to remain in power for a very long time. And it now appears that with this new development in terms of what has happened in Beijing today, Xi Jinping, the president of China, may remain seated in power for a fairly long time to come. And to discuss more on this and the implications this will have for the region, we are joined in by Professor Swaran Singh, who is a professor at the School of International Studies at the JNU. Professor Swaran Singh, thank you very much indeed for joining us. It is an important day in China and also for the rest of the region because Xi Jinping is now virtually unfettered with a constitutional limit that earlier existed that had restricted his tenure with 2 terms. But now he can continue, if he so wants it, virtually for life. Is China now surely and clearly slipping towards a rule by one individual?
This is clearly a kind of a historic shift, but it is part of several things that are happening. If you notice, at least from October last year, when the party Congress had a meeting, it definitely means that some things are fundamentally changing. Right. In early 1980s, Deng Xiaoping had introduced the whole restructuring both of armed forces as well as of the party, and for the president had introduced a situation of a provision for 2 terms. Right. Now, it seems from those fundamental changes that great leader Deng Xiaoping had brought about in China, Xi Jinping is changing those fundamentals, and it could both mean it could result in sort of making China more stronger, but also could also derail China, because China, as you notice, is gradually drifting, according to Xi Jinping himself, towards democracy. And this one uncontrolled, uncontested leader is necessarily an indication of something not being democratic.
Right.
And there are dangers in this, and you will notice already that there is a lot of silence among people in China. People are either not commenting or commenting saying, I don't want to be quoted by name. So there is a certain simmering discontent that one can notice. Nobody speaks on it, of course, but you can notice that discomfort at various levels, right from the top of the street. And that everything is not going well as far as this decision is concerned.
Absolutely, indeed. And now Xi Jinping, one of the reasons that he has in fact given as to why he needs this extension, or rather the limit of 2 terms being taken off, is that he says he's embarked on this massive anti-corruption drive, which is the reasons why he needs this extension. Do you agree with that, or is this just more concentration of power in his own hands?
There is no doubt that there is clearly an enormous effort to concentrate power in one hand. And the whole tradition of last 20 years of 2 leaders making a team on the top was itself beginning to erode the moment Xi Jinping came to power 5 years ago.
Right.
But now we notice the way new sort of calibrations are happening in terms of who are the leaders who will now get promoted by National People's Congress. It looks like the Prime Minister's position is being further undermined. So it's virtually going to be Xi Jinping and his anointed few people around him, which is absolutely not a good story, because leaders must feedback as to what is happening on the ground. And sometimes when you pick people who are only yes men around you, this could be a good signal for the leader himself.
Absolutely, indeed. And also, there is a marked difference in terms of Xi Jinping's approach with that of his predecessor, Hu Jintao, who had given this doctrine of the peaceful rise of China. Xi Jinping is different in terms of his projection of power for China, be it the belligerence that he's shown in the South China Sea region, or this projection of power in Obor. Should India be concerned now that Xi Jinping is firmly in power in China for, it now appears, pretty much indefinitely?
I think you were showing earlier in this program that Xi Jinping is not the only leader who is increasingly concentrating power in his own hands and potentially stay in power for much longer time. There are several leaders who are there in position for decades. So it's not a matter of concern, I would say, but we will have to really reckon with, because some of the assertive policies that he has introduced among neighborhood, on his Belt and Road Initiative, etc., would definitely get far more mileage and far more support, because he is in command and he will push those ideas really seriously. So, these are not things which are disappearing in a hurry now. So that is what India will have to reckon with, and then calibrate their response to China in such a manner that he is in position and he's going to push those ideas until he is sidelined or he's replaced by another leader in future.
Right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Subsawaran Singh, for joining us. Interesting days ahead in China. Xi Jinping is virtually unchallenged, and the ramifications of that will be felt not just in China, perhaps in the greater region at large. And also staying on with more news from China, where a senior Chinese Islamic official has warned against creeping Islamization in the country. The official has warned the Chinese Muslims of mosques that copy foreign styles and strive to practice their faith in a more Chinese way. Now, Yang Feimeng, head of the government-linked China Islamic Association, has said that Islam had a long and glorious history in China. However, he's also cautioned of the problems that are becoming apparent in recent years. Now, China is home to closely about 20 million Muslims, mostly living in the western part of the country. While China officially guarantees freedom of religion, it has in recent years tightened controls in the heavily Muslim-dominated areas.